Hello to everyone, both here in Strasbourg and of course following us online for this press conference of the S&D Group, the last one ahead of the summer break. And I will hand over to Iratxe García Perez, our group president, to speak on the priorities for this week.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everybody. We don't normally meet at this time of day, but the S&D wanted to respect the key debate this morning. It was absolutely fundamental for the work of the institution. It was important for us to be present in the hemicycle, and that's why we changed the timing of our press conference today, and that meant we were able to participate actively in the debate this morning. This plenary is, of course, the last one before the summer, but it's also unique for other reasons. It's worth mentioning. The Spanish presidency kicks off this month, and the beginning of the presidency coincides with an electoral campaign in Spain as well. We should have the Spanish Prime Minister here in the plenary, but I'm sure that will happen in September, where we can have a discussion with the Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, or whoever holds the presidency of the Council. As I said, there are some other important issues during this week in our parliamentary session. We discussed the EU nature restoration law this morning. It was absolutely crucial as a debate, not just for the substance, because the substance is of critical importance. We've explained why we need this. 80% of EU's natural habitats need tailor-made protection to prevent further destruction. The substance is important, but the law and debate around it has really shed a light on the fact that all the EPP is trying to do now is steal votes from the far right. They are committed to climate denialism. They've taken a path that endangers the very future of the EU, and this is very worrying indeed. We've said this several times in the S&D. We continue to leave the door open to an EPP which understands that despite our differences, we need to tackle the challenges of the EU together. But what we will not permit is the right-wing drift of the EPP, led by Manfred Weber, who is endangering the future of the EU and the cordon sanitaire that we have around the far right that wants to destroy the European project, and are delighted to have new allies in the EPP. This is the case across Europe, but we've seen a clear example of how this could happen in Spain over the last few weeks. Many local authorities and regions have set up new alliances which threaten LGBTQI community, women's rights, questioning the reality of climate change. But let me stress, we will not take our eye off the ball. We will continue to build on progressive pro-European alliances to defend policies such as the one we were talking about this morning, the nature restoration law. This was a law drafted by the European Commission. It is a commission which is led by Ursula von der Leyen, from the same political family as Mr. Weber, and many commissioners are from his family as well. The nature restoration law was also supported by the Council, a council which contains conservative or right-wing governments. So it is completely irresponsible for the EPP to take this position. And I think it's worth pointing the finger at their leader, Manfred Weber, who is trying to torpedo this proposal, which of course could be improved. That goes without saying, but nevertheless, we hope it can be adopted tomorrow. Let's wait and see. Another important issue this week is the directive against violence against women. We hope that the EPP or other political groups will lift the block they placed on this file in the Parliament. I hope we can get a majority to move forward. But it's clear, as I said, our position is that it's clear that the right has not recognized the scale of the violence against women. 6 women were murdered over the last few days in Spain, murdered as a direct result of male violence. Then we have the annual report on the rule of law. No progress has been made in Hungary or in Poland. This is clear in the Commission's report, and it's clear that the government have ignored the Commission's recommendations. There will be a resolution forthcoming this week on the electoral law and the peace new investigative law, which does not support the democratic values and the rule of law that we fight for here in the Parliament. And then search and rescue resolution. This is something which we have spearheaded as the S&D, and this is vessels of more than 500 people at sea. We've asked for more information about what happened with the incident in the sea and the hundreds of deaths, and we await further information. These deaths concern us all. We cannot just turn our back. And to save lives, we need more funds for search and rescue missions. And all of this is contained in the resolution which will be adopted. And speaking of more funds, more EU funds. If we want more EU policies, we need more resources. So we will be discussing the budget and own resources. It's clear that money isn't the problem, but inequality, distribution of wealth is the problem. We have called upon citizens to make a great deal of sacrifices, and we cannot keep doing this. We have to call for taxes on the ultra wealthy so that they pay their fair share. We have a fair distribution of resources in the EU. And then finally, I wanted to talk about Latin America, which is a priority for my group throughout this parliamentary term. It will continue to be so over the next few weeks, thanks to the Spanish presidency. On the 17th and 18th of July, the EU CELAC summit will be held in Brussels. I'd like to remind you that this summit has not taken place for 8 years now, and there will also be a leaders summit, a social and progressive leaders summit in the margins of this summit. We're working together with Pedro Sanchez and the PES. Lula, Boric, and Petro will be there, as well as Sols, De Costa, and Pedro Sanchez. Pedro Sanchez has worked very hard indeed to facilitate this informal meeting, which will take place as part of the summit. And then finally, strengthening cooperation between the EU and Latin America. In order to do this, we need to strengthen interparliamentary relations. This is why we'll be opening an office in the region over the next few months. This is something which has been in the works for a while now. The Parliament Bureau took a decision after an initiative put forward by the Socialist Party. I think this is a great step, which will consolidate parliamentary cooperation. I think having a European Parliament liaison office in Latin America will be an excellent step. So that's all from my side, but I'm happy to take any questions from you. Thank you.
Iratxe, we have the first question. Lorenzo, please introduce yourself.
Okay. Lorenzo Gonçalves from Asca News Italy. I have two questions. One concerns the nature restoration law. If it is rejected, are you going to support the amendment presented by the Renew group, which actually gives the possibility to approve directly the whole general approach from the Council, knowing that after there are other amendments that could be complementary to this. But it's important to know whether the Socialist Group will approve this amendment. Second question is on migration. There is this agreement by the Council in the 8th of June in Luxembourg. And we know that Pedro Sanchez likes the agreement. I mean, he supported it. We know that in the Socialist Group, not everybody is happy with this agreement, and you have to negotiate this agreement with the Parliament in the trilogue. What is your opinion, and what is the Socialist Group going to do in the trilogue on this agreement? Thank you.
Muchas gracias por las dos preguntas.
Thank you very much for those two questions. Firstly, the amendment supporting the position of Council on nature restoration. Yes, we are going to support that amendment. We don't think it's adequate, but we have therefore tabled other amendments to try and improve the position. We want to be more ambitious in this area. And in any case, I think that tomorrow's priority is for the Parliament to have a position which we can use as a basis to negotiate with Council on, so that the nature restoration law becomes a reality. Anything else would be irresponsible. And the EPP is suggesting that the proposal be completely rejected. The proposal can be improved. We need to discuss it. It needs to be debated here in Parliament and in Council with governments. But at least we need the opportunity to discuss this and to make sure that this law gets on the statute book. So in favour of the amendment, and then subsequently we are tabling other amendments which are more ambitious than this one. Now on migration, of course, Pedro Sanchez, together with other prime ministers and leaders of national governments, heads of governments, is working towards further agreement. There's been an agreement. It's agreement which is based on compromise, of course. There are differences, of course, in Council. And as always, this means negotiation, as it always does, just as we have here in Parliament. So what I believe is important is that we should welcome the Council's agreement, while at the same time realizing that it is far from perfect, that we need to discuss it, we need to improve it. But essentially, this is something which is on the table, which we can use, and on which we can start further work with. So I do think it's absolutely crucial that we approve the Council's position. The Spanish government and Pedro Sanchez have contributed to this coming on board, because we've spent years and years reviewing immigration policy to make sure that it is a European policy with a European dimension, a global dimension. And what I do hope now is that we will have the time and the calm to have a responsible, useful debate, so that finally we can get a proper agreement in Council.
Yes, please. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Sarah Wheaton with Politico. With the EPP working with ID and ECR on the issues you've mentioned, nature restoration, violence against women, could you What's your reaction to that alliance, and is it fair to say that the S&D is sort of being squeezed out of legislating?
No se está dejando de lado.
Well, we're not leaving anybody aside. We're a social and democratic group, and we're open to alliances. We're open to those who are pro-European and who defend European values. And clearly, we have here the EPP, which has been with us in alliance with pro-European forces at the beginning of this remit. And what we are trying to do is to ensure that we form a barrier around the extreme right. And the only group which has broken this is the EPP. The S&D group is not isolated. It is cooperating with all the other pro-European forces. So we found that what we want to do is to work with those to ensure that we can be faithful to the initiatives which we decided to work on at the beginning of this parliamentary term.
Mayouen Lamy for Context. César Luena on the nature restoration law asked Ursula von der Leyen to defend and take a clear stand in favor of the legislation. Did you receive any support from the President of the European Commission since then? And I have another question. Are you confident regarding the outcome of the vote tomorrow?
Hay un apoyo.
Yes, the President and Commission is supporting this. They want this draft piece of legislation to be on the table. They're not going to withdraw it. So there is a commitment on behalf of the European Commission to move forward on this law. We have the clear support of the European Commission and its President on the nature restoration law. Whether I'm confident or not, well, I like to be positive as a person. The numbers are pretty much in balance, but nevertheless, I am confident, and I do hope that the conscience of some EPP members who want to give this law a chance, in the end, will lead us to getting a positive vote. However, if in the end the pressure put on by the leader of the party continues to have an effect, well, but right until the last minute, I personally want to be positive.
Yes, here first and then afterwards Lara.
Alfonso Bianchi, Europa Today, Italy. You said you still want to keep the dialogue with the EPP alive. From the outside, it seems that EPP is already on campaign for the next election and is trying to build a new alliance, possible, maybe difficult. Today, the leader of the left group in the briefing said that you should do the same. You should build a different alliance of progressives in Europe. Do you agree with this? Do you think you should start, don't want to say campaigning, but trying to build a different future possible majority for the EP, for the parliament? Thank you.
Evidentemente,
Of course, we in our political group are working, we're defining our priorities, we're working on our strategy, and we have always said that we're going to cooperate with progressive movements. There's no doubt that that's important when necessary. It doesn't depend just on us. It depends on the numbers which come out of the European elections next year. Well, clearly, we are not going to vote with people who want to destroy the European project. We're going to continue working with those who are in favour of it, and that is something which we are very strongly committed to.
And afterwards, Oliver.
Laura Zornoza para la agencia EFE.
I'm going to ask questions in Spanish. First of all, my first question on your internal calculations. The Socialists are going to work together tomorrow and vote as a bloc on the nature restoration law. Now, also, I've noted that the Socialists are not part of the resolution which was approved by other groups, which is going to involve the idea of having a unified position. And, of course, there are a number of people who have not even got round the table because they don't think the proposal is ambitious enough. But what do you feel in the context of this whole negotiation? Well, first of all, let's hope that the resolution is adopted in the European Parliament in plenary. If it is adopted along the way that the S&D wish, then we can be a lot more ambitious than we were initially. The proposal can move forward. So S&D are going to come in and vote, and this is going to be something which we're going to do on behalf of the European Parliament. So those who voted, whatever they did on the resolution, well, if it is adopted, well, then we have to defend this position. And this is something which we have made very clear to the EPP. And on the nature restoration law, your calculations, yes, I am confident that we're going to have a very unified bloc vote to support our view and to make sure that we make it clear that the EPP's proposal on rejection is something that we cannot go along with.
President Metsola told the FT that members should, respect the thin line between environmental ambitions and what citizens can accept when they vote on the nature restoration law. It sounds a bit like a veiled attack on the nature restoration law on the part of the President of the Parliament. In your view, is she still in line, or is she overstepping what her mandate actually asks her to do?
Well, I didn't listen to those statements, but I nevertheless have no doubt that President Metsola is going to commit herself to the position of Parliament. And if tomorrow we achieve the vote we want, I am sure that President Metsola will defend the position which will allow us to negotiate the nature restoration law with Council. But I haven't actually listened to the exact words of those statements, but I am sure that President Metsola will shoulder her responsibility and will defend the majority position of this institution.
Oops. Okay, Maciek, please. We have.
Maciek Zakowski, Talk FM Radio. First question is about your opening remarks that you believe that in September Pedro Sánchez will be here in the Parliament as leader of your country. So my question is on what kind of, I would say, base or informations or election polls you build your statement and your hope. So this is the first question. And the second is about resolution on Poland, or we prefer to say on Polish government. This is like 30 or 35th resolution on Poland, and the situation, as you also said, is decreasing, not improving. So do you believe that in the power of this resolution that you are still supported or no?
Que el gobierno...
Well, the Polish government seems to be deaf to the suggestions put forward by this Parliament. And we as an institution cannot give up our right to defend issues which are fundamental to the European project. And this is a basic priority. Therefore, okay, there are people who are deaf. What we are saying is falling on deaf ears, but we shall still continue to push forward our position. Of course, I do hope that we will get a progressive majority in my country following the elections, so we shall be able to continue to carry on shouldering the responsibilities which we have had over the past few difficult years. And so let's hope that we get a progressive majority, and let's hope that therefore we shall be able to continue along the same lines as we have thus far.
Your questions. Thank you very much, Iratxe, and wishing you a good last plenary here and looking forward to seeing you back in the autumn. Merci. Gracias.